The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us for our webinar on healthy eating. We're delighted to welcome accredited dietitian Adele Mackey from DAVIC to present the webinar for us. Just so we can check that you can hear the webinar, could you please click the raise hand button now if you have ever taken part in a webinar before? Excellent. Thank you very much. We've got a few raised hands here, so that at least lets us know that you can hear us. And also, just before we begin, we have Amelia Lake, a researcher from the Australian Centre for Behavioural Research in Diabetes, who would like to sit in the presentation. If you have any objections to Amelia observing the webinar, then could you please type it into the chat box now, send it through to us, and Amelia will withdraw from the presentation. After the webinar, if you have any questions, Adele will be delighted to answer these at the end of the presentation. If you think of a question, you can type it into the chat box, select the Send to Staff option, and submit it to us at the end of the presentation. Now, I will hand over to Adele, who will begin tonight's webinar. I hope you enjoy it, and we're happy to answer any questions that might arise from the presentation.
Hello, and thank you, Angela, for my introduction. So my name is Adele Mackey, and I'm one of the dietitians here at Diabetes Australia Victoria, and I've been working here for 4 years, helping people with both type 1 and type 2 diabetes to manage their conditions. So I hope that in tonight's presentation you get a lot out of it and a lot of practical tips for healthy eating and lifestyle management to help manage your diabetes. So this is just an overview of what we'll be covering in tonight's session in the next 40 to 45 minutes. So just talking about the general healthy eating guidelines for people with diabetes, weight management and why that's important for diabetes, what makes up a healthy diet, talking about carbohydrates, sugars, the glycemic index, the different types of fats, sodium, alcohol, some practical tips to help keep you on track with your lifestyle changes, tips for eating out, physical activity, and then we'll also touch on some of the programs that we run here at Diabetes Australia Victoria as well. So, just this first slide to really touch on the 3 things that are important for the management of type 2 diabetes, and just to say that there is no reason why anybody who's diagnosed with type 2 diabetes can't live a very long and healthy life, and really not be fearful of all the complications that you might see that are advertised in the media. And the way that people with diabetes can live a long and healthy life is by achieving and maintaining a healthy body weight, or as close to your recommended healthy weight range as possible, because we do realise that it's not possible for everybody to achieve their healthy weight range. By maintaining a healthy balanced diet or eating plan, and being consistent with physical activity on a regular basis. So that's something that I really want to emphasise, is the consistency with physical activity, because a lot of people start off with good intentions of exercising most days of the week, and really it can come down to 1 or 2 days every now and again. So, but I'll touch on physical activity a bit more later on. So what is a diabetic diet? Is there such thing as a special diet for people with diabetes? Do you need to be cooking different meals to the rest of your family? Do you need to be buying special products? These are all common questions that we get working at Diabetes Australia, and we do have an information and advice line that people can ring up if they've got questions about it, and that's the first thing people usually ask is, what can I eat? But the good news is there is no such thing as a diabetic diet, and healthy eating is the same for all people, regardless of whether or not you have diabetes. So there's no reason why you need to be eating special meals compared to the rest of your family, or buying special products, or there's no reason why you can't have a slice of cake at a birthday party just because you have diabetes. Healthy eating exactly the same for everybody. So this is just to, again, really point that out, is that the advice as dietitians that we give to people with or without diabetes is exactly the same, and it's based on the Australian Dietary Guidelines. And these new dietary guidelines that you'll see just here in this poster were released earlier this year. They were updated and released in, I think it was towards the end of February or early March. And the main guidelines were really, they haven't changed that much, but to enjoy a wide variety of nutritious foods. Where's my pointer gone? Oh, I keep losing it. Oh, there it is. To enjoy a wide variety of nutritious foods, and these foods that you'll see here in the circle are what we call our core foods or everyday foods, and these are the foods that contain the most nutrition. So we've got our breads and our cereals group here, so not only does that include the obvious bread and breakfast cereals, but also includes other grains as well, like quinoa, couscous, rice, pasta, whole grain crackers, and these will be a great source of fibre if you're choosing the whole grain and low GI choices, and we'll talk about those a bit later on and why fibre is so important in our diet. And then next we have our vegetables group, and it's important that we're including lots of vegetables right throughout the day, and vegetables are a great source of fibre, and they can fill you up for very little kilojoules or calories, and they're a great source of antioxidants, vitamins and minerals as well. And then our fruits, and it's important that all people with or without diabetes are eating a couple of serves of fruit a day, and there's no type of fruit that you need to avoid when you have diabetes. All types of fruits are good. We just need to be wary of our portion size. So for example, for a banana, if it's a really big banana, then cut it in half, and that's most likely half a banana would be one serving, or if you've got really small pieces of fruit, then a couple of small pieces of fruit would be considered one serving as well. And then over here we've got our dairy products, and it's important for everybody, regardless of their weight or regardless of whether or not they have diabetes, to be choosing reduced or low-fat dairy products because of the type of fat that's in dairy, and again I'll talk about that a little bit later on. And it's recommended that we have anywhere between 2 and 4 serves of dairy, depending on whether you're a male or a female. And then over here we've got our meats and alternatives group, which are a really great source of protein, iron, zinc, and also that group also includes things like eggs and nuts and fish, as well as red meat and chicken as well. Probably one of the major changes that's occurred with the new dietary guidelines as they've been updated, and I keep losing my pointer, there it is, with the new dietary guidelines, is that they've actually separated out the fats and the oils from what we call our sometimes foods. So you'll notice that I've referred to these foods in the circle here as our everyday foods, and these foods down here as our sometimes foods. So I'm not referring to them as being good or bad or healthy and unhealthy, because I don't like to use those words. It often, I feel, can set up guilt around eating these sorts of foods, and look, there's no reason why you can't include these foods down here in your diet on special occasions. So this includes things like alcohol, it includes things like takeaway, chocolates, biscuits, cakes, things that don't necessarily contribute a lot of nutrition to the diet, but they're fun to include every now and again, especially if you're being sociable and for special occasions as well. That advice is no different to what I would give to people without diabetes as well. Those foods should really only be limited to special occasions and in small amounts. But the fats and the oils, we've now recognised that they can play an important part in the diet, and I'll touch on that a bit later when I'm talking about the saturated and unsaturated fats. So one of the first lines of treatment for people who are diagnosed with type 2 diabetes is aiming for a healthy body weight. So for people who are overweight when they're diagnosed with diabetes, then reducing your weight as close to your healthy weight range as possible is ideal, because that will help to manage your diabetes a bit better as well. And I'll talk about in a minute the difference between the waist circumference measurement and your body weight and why that's important too. So a lot of you might have heard about the body mass index or the BMI, and some of you might have even calculated it for yourself or had somebody calculate it for you. But this is just really an indication, gives us a general indication about your risk for chronic disease and perhaps complications of diabetes as well. So the way that we work it out is that we take your weight in kilograms and we divide it by your height in meters squared. So just as an example, just say for somebody who's 70 kilos and 170 centimetres tall, we would divide their weight, which is 70, by this calculation down here, 1.7 times 1.7, because that's their height in metres squared, and it come up with a number. And this is just for people under the age of 65. This is what is indicated as being underweight, a healthy weight, overweight, or obese. However, there are some limitations with using this measurement. For people who are of different ethnic backgrounds, they will have different BMI cutoffs. So for people who are from an Asian or Indian background, their healthy weight range is considered to be anywhere between 18.5 to 23, so it's slightly lower. And this is because studies show that people who are from these ethnic groups actually develop the risk factors for chronic disease at a much lower BMI compared to other population groups. And on the other hand, people who are perhaps from a Maori, Tongan or other Pacific Island background have a higher BMI cutoff for their healthy weight range. So their healthy weight range is between 22 and 27. And this is because studies show that people from this population group don't develop the risk factors for chronic disease until they're at a higher BMI. One of the limitations with the body mass index, though, is it tells you nothing about where your body fat is actually distributed, and it doesn't tell you anything about how much muscle you have compared to how much body fat you have. So the body mass index doesn't tell you whether the majority of your fat is found on your hips and your thighs or whether it's on your belly, and it also doesn't, as I said, give you any indication of how much muscle mass you have. So, for example, if you calculated the BMI of an AFL footballer, I can guarantee that their BMI would come up as being either overweight or obese. When clearly you look at these athletes and they're not overweight or obese, but they are carrying a lot of muscle mass. Muscle weighs more than body fat, and that actually gives them a falsely high BMI. So we can use it as a general indication for getting an idea of what somebody's health may be like, but we do need to look at that person and take into account, you know, what ethnic background are they from? Are they carrying? Where are they carrying their weight? And also, are they or do they have a bigger bone structure that's contributing to that extra weight, or is it a higher percentage of muscle mass? What we like to focus on more is the waist measurement, and this is for a couple of different reasons. So the fat that we carry around our stomach area is actually very different to the fat that we carry around other parts of our body. So if you carry more fat around your tummy area, this type of fat is what we call metabolically active fat. It actually releases hormones that increase our cholesterol, that increase our blood pressure, that increase inflammation, and also increases insulin resistance. So what this means for people with diabetes is there is an increased risk of heart disease as you get older, and it also means that with the increased insulin resistance, the insulin that your pancreas is producing to bring your blood sugar levels down isn't able to work properly. And your body needs to keep producing more and more insulin. And the reason for this is because that fat that we carry around our tummy area actually sits on top of our organs. So it sits on top of our pancreas, it sits on top of our liver, sits on top of our stomach, and it makes it a lot harder for our insulin to work properly, to get to the glucose into our muscles and into our organs to be used as energy. And unfortunately, when we lose weight, unfortunately we can't spot reduce it. It does come off from all over our body in small amounts. And if you're consistent with your healthy eating and your exercise, and you are carrying a bit of extra weight around the tummy area, then it can take time, but it will come down. So you can see up here for men, we would like men to have a waist measurement of less than 94 centimetres and for women of less than 80 centimetres to help decrease your risk of complications and to make your diabetes much easier to manage. People often find that as their waist circumference comes down, they decrease their insulin resistance and their blood sugar levels actually come down quite a bit as well. And like I said, this can take time, but you just need to be consistent and hang in there because often people, when they lose weight, will notice, it doesn't seem to be coming off my tummy. It is, but it just takes a lot longer. So I think shows like The Biggest Loser have given people really unrealistic expectations for how quickly you can lose weight. If you've ever watched shows like The Biggest Loser, you'll see that they're losing 6, 7, 8, sometimes even more kilos in a week. Now, for the average person who's, working a full-time job, perhaps has children to look after or other family commitments, it's just not realistic to fit in that much exercise and to have such a controlled diet. So I really don't like shows like that for that particular reason. And it's not safe to lose weight that quickly anyway. One thing that I really want to highlight and up here is even just to begin with, a weight loss of 5 to 10% of what your initial body weight is can result in really significant health improvements. So although, yes, over the long term, we would like you to, get down to your desired waist circumference, or we would like you to get down to your ideal weight range in the long term, so I'm talking maybe over a year or even longer, but initially just 5 to 10% of your body weight. So for example, if you weigh 90 kilos, it could be a weight loss of 4 to 5 kilos. Can have actually quite significant effects on your blood sugar levels, on your cholesterol, on your blood pressure. So a lot of people think, I need to lose 20, 30 kilos. But to really see those health benefits, it can be as little as 5 to 10%. So just something to keep in mind as well. So what is the best type of diet for weight loss? I mean, I'm sure you've probably read a million things on the internet. You see different diet in magazines each week. There are new books that are always coming out. There's something on the latest morning show. So really, what is the best type of diet that we should be following for weight loss? And look, the answer is there is no one best diet for weight loss. Studies have shown that you will lose weight no matter what type of diet you're on. The key is actually being able to stick to it. And there's no mystery about all these different types of diets. There's no secret. And if you look at them, the one thing they have in common is that they're probably all around about 12 to 1400 calories in total. So we're looking at basically just a low-calorie way of eating. And as long as you can stick to that, you're going to lose weight. And the one thing that I like to ask people before they start any type of diet, and I've got lots of friends who are always starting different types of diets, and I ask them, like, realistically, before they start, is this something you feel like you're going to be able to stick to for the rest of your life? And often they'll tell me no. And then I ask them, well, what's the point? If you're not going to be able to stick to it for the rest of your life, then what's the point in starting it in the first place? Because you'll probably just end up putting weight back on once you've finished it. So all these different types of fad diets that you'll see in the media, and they are fads, majority of them have no scientific basis. They might have, one study that's been performed on 6 people, or just people testimonials. So that's not real hard scientific evidence. Fad diets often promote fast weight loss or a really quick fix. Lose 6 kilos in 2 weeks or something like that, which again, as I explained, isn't really that safe either. One thing that I forgot to mention when I was talking about rates of weight loss is, you've probably all heard it before, but the slower you take the weight off, the more likely you are to keep it off. And it's not something that people want to hear, because a lot of people do want to lose weight really quickly. But when we lose weight, like it or not, we lose a little bit of muscle mass as well as body fat. And the more muscle we have, the higher our metabolism. So the amount of muscle we have really is the main determining factor as to how fast our metabolism ticks over. So if you lose weight really quickly, chances are you're going to be losing quite a bit of muscle mass as well as body fat, and then what you've done is you've reduced your metabolism. And eventually, because you've gone on some sort of really crazy diet and you've lost weight really quickly and you've reduced your metabolism, you decide that you probably, you can't stick to this type of diet because it's too restrictive, and then you'll put on weight, and you'll probably put on more than what you started with in the first place, and this is because you've lowered your metabolism. So the slower you take the weight off, the more likely you are to keep it off, because you're actually maintaining more of your muscle mass, and you're probably looking about 0.5 to 1 kilo a week maximum weight loss, but often people will find that their weight may not change very much on the scales, but you might find that your clothes are fitting a lot looser, or you suddenly can go down a pant size or something like that. So the scales aren't often a good indication of how your body shape is changing. And fad diets do often offer that fast weight loss quick fix, and they're short-term changes. So I rarely know of somebody who's stuck to a fad diet for more than 6 months at a time, because they're often even socially too restrictive. So, try going out for dinner if you're following a really low carbohydrate diet, or you're cutting out this food group or that food group, or you're going to somebody's house for dinner. It does become too hard. Fad diets usually exclude or severely restrict certain food groups or nutrients. Usually carbohydrates are a big one. They often promote magic foods or combinations of foods, and some of my friends that go on crazy diets are often telling me about some extract from a raspberry tea leaf or something that I've never really heard of before, but claims to work wonders. They often have really rigid rules that focus on weight loss, like you can't combine this nutrient with that nutrient, and again it all becomes too hard, and they're often based on one single study or testimonials. Meal replacement shakes are often ones that we get asked lots of questions about, and there's so many of them now. You can buy them in the supermarket, you can buy them in Priceline, you can buy them in chemists, and they come in a wide variety of different forms as well, from powders and ready-made drinks to soups, bars and biscuits. And there's no secret to why they work. They're portion controlled and they're very low in energy as well. So they're very low in carbohydrate, and may not be suitable for some people who are taking certain types of diabetes tablets or who are on insulin injections. Most of them aren't nutritionally complete, so meaning that they really don't have a full variety of vitamins and minerals in there that you need to maintain your health. So you usually need to eat extra vegetables, and some of them you even require extra supplements like vitamin and mineral replacement supplements. And they certainly don't give you the health benefits of eating whole foods either. So when we eat whole foods, so when we're eating a variety of fruits and veggies, there's a whole lot of interactions that occur within our body to produce antioxidants and other chemical reactions to help keep us healthy. They don't teach you how to choose healthy foods or make healthy lifestyle changes. So a lot of people will go on these meal replacement shakes in the short term, but still have not been given any education around portion control or how to make healthy food choices or to read labels. And eventually they come off the shakes and go back to eating the way they were in the first place. So, and they also can be very expensive. Some people have actually told me that it's much more expensive than just buying healthy foods in the first place. They're not suitable for people who have liver or kidney problems, and they're not meant to be used forever. So the only ones that dietitians usually recommend are OptiFast or OptiSlim, and they're really to be used under the guidance of a dietitian, so they can guide you through the 3 phases and teach you how to introduce foods so that you don't put the weight back on after you've been on them. So there have been studies done on people who have lost weight successfully and kept it off, and the studies show that people who lose weight and keep it off are those that eat breakfast every day. And again, it's probably something that you've heard so many times, or your mum's probably told you, make sure you eat breakfast every day before you leave the house, but it really is the most important meal of the day, because studies show people who skip breakfast do tend to overeat later in the day, and you really need to kickstart your metabolism after you've been fasting all night while sleeping as well. People also monitor their weight regularly, so whilst you're trying to lose weight, it could mean that you weigh yourself once a week and no more than once a week, because your weight can fluctuate on a daily basis. But once you've reached your goal weight, it might mean that you just hop on the scales once a month just to make sure that you're still tracking along the right path. They watch less than 10 hours of TV per week, and I'm going to talk about why that's important a bit later on. Exercise on average for about an hour a day. And this is most days of the week, because this will be important to help keep the weight off. And they continue to consume a lower calorie diet with reduced portion sizes of meals and by choosing healthier food choices. So what about portion sizes? Because they've certainly increased a lot over the last 50 years. This is just one example of portion control, and you can see here that we've got 3 different sized chocolate bars. We've got your little fun size chocolate bars, your medium size, and then often you can get your king size or your twin pack chocolate bars, just to show you how many calories are in these sorts of foods. So a little snack size or fun size chocolate bar has about 73 calories and only about 8.5 grams of carbohydrates. So that's probably equivalent to, say, a mandarin. As an example. And when I tell people, with diabetes or even without diabetes, if you feel like a piece of chocolate, then just have something like a fun-sized chocolate bar, once a week or something to really satisfy your chocolate craving. And eat it at a time when you can really enjoy it as well. So don't just eat it whilst you're in front of the computer or reading a book, but actually sit down and take the time to enjoy it. Then if you look at your regular size chocolate bar, so the next size up, 313 calories. So for somebody who is wanting to lose weight, 313 calories is about a whole meal. So if you're eating that in between your meals, then that's really, you're adding an additional meal on top of what you're already eating. And then you can see once you go up to the king size or the twin pack, that's 402 calories. And then you look at the carbohydrate as that increases as well. And 8.5 grams of carbohydrate in the fun size isn't likely to send your sugars up through the roof at all, but certainly once you get to 36 or 46, if you're eating that in between meals, then that might start to affect your sugar levels. This is just one simple method that dietitians often use to educate people both with and without diabetes on portion control. And one thing that I want to point out before I explain this diagram is in terms of the size of our plates and our bowls. So I always give this example of, when I go to visit my grandma, who still has the same plates and bowls and the same sets that she was given when she got married 61 years ago, and I compare them to what I've got at home when I've just recently moved house, and her plates and bowls are so much smaller than what I've got in my brand new set. And often if you've got a bigger plate or a bigger bowl, you just tend to fill it without even realizing it, and then you'll just eat it because that's what you've served yourself. So a good way to help reduce your portion sizes is to actually use a smaller plate or a smaller bowl, because if you put a small meal on a big plate, you're going to look at that and say, well, geez, I think I might be hungry after I finish dinner. Whereas if you use a smaller plate but fill it up, it sounds silly, but you actually trick your mind into thinking that you're having more to eat. And I often do that with my muesli in the morning. I put it in a small bowl because a half a cup of muesli in a big bowl really looks like a minuscule portion. And I find it works for me. It actually helps to make me feel fuller if it looks like I've got a bigger bowl. So if you have your smaller plate, and it might mean that you either need to use a bread and butter plate, or if you go to an op shop and get an old set, or maybe still your grandparents. So if you've got this plate and you divide it into a half, and a half your plate should be filled with vegetables or salad. So, and by vegetables I mean non-starchy veggies. So anything except potato, sweet potato or corn, you can really fill up as much of your plate with those vegetables as you like. And then you've got your carbohydrate portions, so whether that's rice, pasta, bread, potatoes or grains, and that's roughly about the size of your fist when you clench it up. Or you're probably looking at maybe about 1 cup of cooked pasta, maybe about 1/2 to 3/4 of a cup of cooked rice, a few small pieces of potatoes. So if you picture the size of an egg as being a piece of potato, then maybe 2 or 3 pieces of potato that size. So, and that should take up about 1/4 of your plate. And then, of course, you've got your protein portion. So whether it's meat, chicken, fish, eggs, or legumes or lentils. And that should be about the size of your palm. So just not your whole hand, but the size of your palm for your protein portion there. And that's just to show you pictorially what that looks like. So you've got your half plate of non-starchy veggies there,